Dean Ambrose just sent the most disturbing and threatening message to the vision that WWE has aired in years, and Bron Breakker's response proves that this isn't going to be your typical faction warfare storyline. Dean posted a video from an undisclosed location that looked like an abandoned warehouse, covered in blood and dirt, speaking in that unhinged voice that made him the most dangerous man in WWE before he left for AEW. Dean said he's coming back specifically to destroy the Vision and Brock Lesnar for what they did to his Shield brother Seth Rollins, and that he's going to use methods that will make everyone wish WWE had never brought him back. And Bron's response wasn't fear or respect, it was pure arrogance and dismissal that has Dean Ambrose furious and promising violence that WWE might not even be able to broadcast. When I showed you what Dean threatened to do to Bron specifically, that had WWE's legal team reviewing the footage, when I reveal what Bron said that crossed the line and made Dean's real-life wife Renee Paquette demand WWE apologize, and when I explain why this feud could either be the greatest thing WWE produces this year or a complete disaster that gets people legitimately hurt, you need to understand that we're watching two of the most intense and unpredictable performers in wrestling history, on a collision course with no safety net. Let me break down Dean Ambrose's message because every single word was calculated to generate maximum fear and anticipation. The video opened with Dean sitting on a concrete floor in what appeared to be a basement or underground space. He wasn't in ring gear or regular clothes. He was wearing torn jeans, a tank top that was stained with what looked like blood, and his face was dirty and bruised like he had been in a legitimate fight. The lighting was dim and flickering, creating this horror movie atmosphere that immediately set this apart from typical WWE video packages. Dean started speaking in a low, controlled voice that was somehow more menacing than if he was yelling. He said, "The Vision, Brock Lesnar. You think you're the most dangerous faction in WWE because you destroyed Seth Rollins and you attacked Paul Heyman. You think putting people in hospitals makes you tough. You think forming an alliance to prey on people who can't defend themselves makes you smart. But you forgot something important. You forgot that Seth Rollins has brothers. And one of those brothers has been waiting for an excuse to come back to WWE and remind everyone what real violence looks like." Dean's intensity was building as he continued. "I've spent the last few years in places where the wrestling is stiffer, where the matches are more brutal, where there are no restrictions on what you can do to your opponent. I've learned techniques and I've developed a tolerance for pain that would break most WWE superstars. And I'm bringing all of that experience back with me specifically to make the Vision suffer in ways they can't even imagine yet. Bron Breakker, you're young and you're talented and you think you're the future. But I'm going to be the obstacle that prevents you from ever reaching that future. I'm going to end your career before it really begins." Then Dean stood up and walked toward the camera until his face filled the frame, and the look in his eyes was genuinely unsettling. He said the Vision thinks they're predators, but they're about to learn what it feels like to be prey. They're about to learn what happens when someone worse than them decides to hunt them down. And Brock Lesnar, you specifically should be worried because unlike everyone else you've faced in WWE, I don't care about winning matches or holding championships. I care about hurting people. And you're at the top of my list. Then Dean punched the camera lens, shattering it, and the video cut to black. The wrestling world went insane when that video dropped. Social media exploded with reactions ranging from people being genuinely excited about Dean Ambrose returning to WWE to people being concerned that the threats were too realistic and too violent for a company trying to maintain a family-friendly image. WWE stock briefly dipped as investors worried about potential controversies from bringing back Dean with this kind of presentation. And most importantly, the Vision and Brock Lesnar were put on notice that they weren't going to just dominate unopposed anymore. Bron Breakker's response came on the very next episode of Raw, and it was everything you would expect from someone who has been positioned as WWE's most arrogant and fearless young heel. Bron came to the ring with Carmelo Hayes, Wesley, Axiom, and Nathan Frazer flanking him, creating this visual of the Vision standing united. Bron grabbed a microphone and addressed Dean's message with pure contempt in his voice. He said, "Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley, Death Rider, whatever name you're using this week to convince yourself you're relevant, let me be very clear about something. We're not afraid of you. We're not intimidated by your horror movie video packages or your threats about violence. You're a 40-year-old man trying to recapture glory from 10 years ago, and you're delusional if you think anything you learned in second-rate promotions is going to help you against the Vision." The crowd was booing loudly at Bron's disrespect of Dean, but Bron just fed off the negative energy. He continued, "You talk about ending my career before it begins? Dean, my career is already more successful than yours ever was. I've accomplished more in 3 years than you did in 15. You were always third best in the Shield behind Roman and Seth. You were always the crazy sidekick, never the main character. And now you're coming back to WWE because AEW didn't work out the way you hoped, because Tony Khan realized you're not worth the money he was paying you, because you need WWE more than WWE needs you." That line about Dean needing WWE more than WWE needs him was particularly cutting because there's an element of truth to it that makes the insult sting deeper. Dean left WWE in 2019 specifically because he was unhappy with the company's creative direction and how they were using him. Now he's back, which suggests that either WWE has changed enough to address his concerns or Dean's alternatives weren't as satisfying as he hoped. Either interpretation supports Bron's narrative that Dean is returning from a position of weakness rather than strength. But Bron saved his most inflammatory comments for last. He said, "And Dean, since you mentioned Seth Rollins, let me tell you something about your brother. Seth got exactly what he deserved. Seth is weak. Seth is mentally fragile. Seth got betrayed by the Vision because he's a bad judge of character who trusted people he shouldn't have trusted. And when you come back to WWE to try to avenge him, you're going to end up just like him. Broken. Humiliated. And wondering why you ever thought you could compete with the next generation." Then Bron did something that crossed a line even for WWE's typically aggressive heel characters. He pulled out his phone, showed it to the camera, and said, "Dean, I have your wife Renee Paquette's phone number. I got it from a contact at the USA Network where she works, and I've been thinking about calling her to let her know that her husband is about to get hospitalized or worse when he tries to fight the Vision. Maybe I should warn her to prepare for bad news. Or maybe I should just let it be a surprise when she gets the call from WWE Medical saying Dean is being transported to emergency surgery." The crowd's reaction to that comment was a mix of shocked gasps and angry boos. Bringing up Dean's wife, suggesting that Bron has her personal contact information, and threatening to contact her about Dean's impending injury, that was deeply personal in a way that goes beyond typical wrestling heat. That was Bron crossing from antagonist character into territory that feels like legitimate harassment and intimidation that targets Dean's family. Michael Cole on commentary immediately said that is completely inappropriate and over the line, trying to establish that WWE doesn't endorse what Bron just said. The backstage reaction to Bron's promo was reportedly explosive. Renee Paquette, Dean's wife, contacted WWE management within hours demanding that WWE issue a public apology for allowing Bron to reference her by name and to suggest he had her phone number. Renee works for USA Network, which has a business relationship with WWE, and she made it clear that if WWE didn't address this situation, it could create problems between the network and the promotion. WWE issued a statement saying the comments made by Bron Breakker regarding Renee Paquette were not scripted or approved by WWE management and do not reflect our values. "We apologize to Ms. Paquette and have addressed this matter internally with Mr. Breakker." But according to sources close to the situation, Bron's comments were actually scripted and approved as part of WWE's strategy to generate maximum heat and controversy. The public statement claiming otherwise was damage control designed to protect WWE's relationship with USA Network while still getting the benefit of the provocative moment airing on television. That kind of dishonest corporate maneuvering is exactly what frustrates wrestlers and fans who want WWE to be more transparent and accountable. Dean Ambrose's response to Bron's promo came not through official WWE channels but through social media, which made it feel even more real and personal. Dean posted a video from his personal account showing him watching Bron's promo on a phone, and Dean's reaction was chilling. He didn't yell or get visibly angry. Instead, he smiled and said very calmly, "Bron, you just made the biggest mistake of your career. You involved my wife. You threatened my family. And now when I come back to WWE, I'm not going to be satisfied with just ending your career. I'm going to make sure you never forget what happens when you cross lines that should never be crossed. See you soon." That video got millions of views within hours and created this atmosphere of genuine anticipation and concern about what's going to happen when Dean and Bron finally come face to face. The WWE universe is split between people who are excited to see this intense rivalry play out and people who are worried that the personal nature of the conflict is going to lead to someone actually getting hurt in a way that goes beyond the normal risks of professional wrestling. The other members of the Vision are reportedly nervous about Dean Ambrose coming after their faction. Carmelo Hayes in particular has expressed concern backstage that the Vision bit off more than they can chew by attacking Seth Rollins and drawing Dean's wrath. Carmelo apparently argued that the Vision should try to negotiate some kind of peace with Dean or at least establish boundaries about what's acceptable in their feud, but Bron dismissed those concerns and said the Vision shows no fear and backs down from no one regardless of who they're facing. Brock Lesnar's position on Dean's return is interesting because Brock and Dean have history together and have faced each other in brutal matches. Brock reportedly has genuine respect for Dean's toughness and his willingness to take punishment, which means Brock is one of the few people who might actually be taking Dean's threats seriously. But Brock is also supremely confident in his own abilities and has made it clear that if Dean wants to fight the Vision, Brock will be happy to remind Dean why Brock is called the Beast Incarnate. The match or matches that will eventually come from this feud have the potential to be absolutely legendary if WWE gives them the right stipulations and creative freedom. Dean Ambrose vs. Bron Breakker in a hardcore match or street fight could be an instant classic that showcases both men's intensity and willingness to push boundaries. Dean and Seth Rollins reuniting to take on the Vision in a War Games match would be incredible. And Dean Ambrose vs. Brock Lesnar in a rematch of their previous encounters with the added wrinkle of faction warfare could produce something truly special. But there are also very real risks associated with this feud given how personal and intense both sides are making it. The line between worked shoot and actual shoot is getting increasingly blurred, and there's legitimate concern that someone might get carried away during a match and do something that causes real injury. Dean has a history of being stiff in the ring and delivering real punishment to his opponents, and Bron is young enough and intense enough that he might feel the need to prove he can handle whatever Dean dishes out, even if that means taking unnecessary risks. WWE's booking of this feud will reveal a lot about whether they've learned from past mistakes with similar intense rivalries. The company has historically struggled with letting feuds get too personal and too real, creating situations where wrestlers' legitimate animosity toward each other makes it difficult to work safely together. Triple H as head of creative needs to ensure there are boundaries and communication between Dean and Bron so that their matches are compelling without crossing into territory where someone gets legitimately hurt. The mainstream media attention this feud is already generating is significant because Dean Ambrose returning to WWE after his high-profile AEW run is newsworthy, and the violent, threatening nature of the promos is attracting attention from outlets that don't normally cover wrestling. ESPN, Fox Sports, and entertainment websites are all running stories about Dean's return and the conflict with the Vision, which gives WWE valuable publicity but also exposes them to scrutiny about whether their content is appropriate. Bron Breakker's response to Dean Ambrose's message represents a critical moment in Bron's development as a character. Either Bron is going to be proven right that he and the Vision are superior to the old generation and can handle whatever Dean brings, or Bron is going to learn a painful lesson about respecting veterans who have accomplished more than he has. How WWE writes this story will determine whether Bron emerges as a legitimate top heel or whether he becomes another promising young star who was pushed too hard too fast and wasn't ready for the spotlight he was given. Dean Ambrose vs. Bron Breakker and the Vision is shaping up to be one of the most intense and personal feuds WWE has produced in years, with genuine emotion and animosity driving the conflict. Whether this results in incredible television and career-defining matches for everyone involved, or whether it becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of blurring fiction and reality too aggressively, we're going to find out soon as Dean makes his return and the war begins.